What's going on, Jerome's Minnesota Vikings Training Camp is rolling on down the line, and since the stock market's been a topic of conversation over the last couple of days since last Friday, we got some stock up, we got some stock down, we got some risers and fallers, every single journalistic trope that you want. Now, we're going to exclude J.J. McCarthy and Sling and Sam Darnold because, I mean, they're a given. And also, I actually think that both of their stocks are up. I mean, McCarthy's up significantly. Darnold has really pulled things together the last couple of days. I think that he could hang on to the quarterback one job. But also, the futures on J.J. McCarthy is pretty good. You're not going to want to short him. That's all I'm saying. So we have five risers and fallers at Vikings training camp so far. And also, just because they're rising doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be locked in superstars, but they're just they've been doing themselves some favors. And fallers doesn't mean that they're automatically just going to be cut it out. Ooh, that's a data reference. But just some guys that need a little bit more work. That's all. First up is, I'm sorry, Theo Jackson. Ooh, he's for real. So Theo Jackson's a baller, man. So he's the fourth safety right now behind Harrison, Beasley, Metellus, and company. But I actually do believe that he is going to be a starter next season. We're going to do a more in-depth piece on him sometime this week. But Theo Jackson has shown versatility. He's shown high football IQ. He's a great special teamer, and he just gets it. And he's the type of player that the culture wants and needs. And Brian Flores raves about him. Kevin O'Connell raves about him. And Durante Jones raves about him. And he's a guy that has certainly helped himself. I think that he's gone from a fringe roster player from a season or two ago to a locked-in 53 and probably a future starter. So props to Theo Jackson, just making plays wherever he goes. Number two, riser Dwight McGlothern. So in that cornerback room, there's a lot of room to rise. And McGlothern, I think, has solidified himself as a 53-man roster player, playing primarily with the twos, ahead of guys like Andreu Jr., Jalen Williams, A.J. Green, etc. Also, the fact that if it came down to it, if it came down to one 53-man roster spot, I think that between McGlothern and Duke Shelly or McGlothern and Fabian Moreau, I think that McGlothern would get that spot, mainly because he's younger and it'll probably be easier to get a veteran onto the practice squad, even though Moreau's done really damn good. Hell, Moreau should be on this riser list, but he's not. Spoiler. But McGlothern, pure technique, is good to go and just has that feisty competitiveness that Flores wants out there on the outside. And McGlothern gotten some first-team reps. Can't wait to see him in preseason as well. Number three, defensive lineman Jonah Williams. So Jonah was a bit of an afterthought when he was added as a free agent. The pride of Weber State, sort of bounced around the league, was actually on the Vikings in 2021, then was with the Rams contingent for a hot second. But the fact that he has come in, played some 5-tech, some 3-tech, he's been good at setting the edge. He's been strong at the point of attack. He's been holding the line as well as being a little bit disruptive. He's basically going to be what the Vikings wanted Dean Lowry to be, and I think that he is probably pretty solid on the 53 with Jaquelin Roy and Levi Drake Rodriguez as the second-team defensive line, and I think that he could get some run. I think that he could work his way in the rotation just a little bit. Speaking of Levi Drake Rodriguez, of course, senior sack, Mr. Heart and Hustle, someone who's just really, really impressed on every single rep that he's gotten, and again, he's a name that I cannot wait to see in preseason on Saturday. Just the whirling dervish of energy, just the heart and hustle, all the cliches, lunch pail, all that stuff. But he's a guy that he's a great story. Put in that work, first in the building, last to leave, like we said, all the cliches, but just someone who's extremely likable and does have that talent and was overlooked because he went to a small school. Measurables wise, wasn't all that, but you just saw how, that all-star game in the Tropical Bowl, he dominated with 3 sacks. I think that he could bring that fortitude and that skill set to the Vikings defensive line as well. Riser number 5. So Michael Jurgens. So when Jurgens was a 7th-round pick out of Wake Forest, 7th-round picks aren't necessarily guaranteed 53-man roster spots, but I do think that Jurgens has risen up, and we actually need to update this a little bit because he was listed as second-team left guard. He's played some second-team center as well, and Jurgens, so we talked about this in his video that we did separately. You can look at someone and you could just tell if they're an NFL player or not. Michael Jurgens is an NFL player, and I think that he could be an NFL starter. I'm just putting it on the table. Jurgens, make it smooth like lotion. I do think that Jurgens going to make the 53, and I think that he's going to rise up and eventually become a starter within the next 2 seasons. That's firmly my belief. And that being said, his ass is probably going to get cut because that's just how it works, man. Down or fallers, whatever. So yes. Song remains the same. Lewis Cine, Andreu Jr., the first 2 picks of Quasi's 2022 draft class. I get it. Blah, 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 blah. But at a certain point, just cut bait. And even though the Vikings take on some dead cap with Cine and a little bit with Booth, I mean, it just could be it. Just could be done, man. Now Cine is healthy and back at practice. It could be a spot where they try and showcase him a little bit in preseason, just trying to gin up a trade market. And just watch, like, if some anonymous sources with some of the beat writers come out saying really great things about Lewis Cine, or if O'Connell or Flores comes talking out glowingly, although I don't think Flores would, because Flores doesn't play the games like that. All of a sudden it's just like, oh, we're just trying to make the trade market or something like that. But either way, like, Cine is pretty firmly safety 7 on this team, obviously behind the starters and Theo Jackson, Jay Ward, who's playing some safety and corner. Even Bobby McCain, the veteran with experience with Flores, I think has an edge on Lewis Cine, because at this point, like, draft status, contract, it doesn't mean anything. Like, you're not going to keep Lewis Cine and just hope that you get Jay Ward or Theo Jackson through waivers onto the practice squad. Ain't going to happen. No, we're done with that. And with Booth, it's pretty telling that Booth can't get past the 3rd team, even with all the injuries and attrition that the Vikings have had at cornerback. So it's just, yeah, I think it's done. And sometimes it's just not a fit, right? And he's healthy and is just not jiving with what Durante Jones and what Brian Flores want to do in the secondary, and maybe a fresh start is needed for all parties involved. It certainly could be it. Next up, faller number 3. Thayer Thomas. So Thayer Thomas is a guy that was really great at OTAs, guy that I had high hopes for, but it kind of seems like he's falling behind the 8 ball a little bit. So Jefferson, Addison, 1-2. Naylor and Powell are going to be your second wave of receivers. And then I do think that Trishan Jackson, Jashawn Jones, UDFA out of Maryland, Trent Sherfield, even Lucky Jackson all have an edge on Thayer Thomas at this point. Now, he has worked in with the slot. He has had some nice grabs from J.J. McCarthy, but that spark that we've been looking for, it just hasn't quite been there. And also, he's buried on the punt return depth chart as well, and we thought that could be a way for him to roster or at least make the practice squad. And basically, all of it, like his big plays that he had at OTAs, have been taken over by Jashawn Jones, the Jacksons, and Sherfield. So could be a little bit tough for the pride of NC State, our guy, but hopefully things come together for him the last 3 preseason games. Number 4, Dalton Ryner, and not so much a faller as it's been status quo. And like we said, like, Ryner has been second-team guard only, both right and left, as they've been working to get him ready to be the backup swing guard. Brandel, they haven't changed the first-team offensive line from what I've seen, but Darisaw, Brandel, Bradbury, Ed Ingram, and Brian O'Neill, Blake Brandel and Trench at left guard, Ed Ingram in at right guard for the 3rd season. And Ryner, like we said, was pretty solid last year as the team's starting left guard after Ezra Cleveland went down to injury and was eventually traded. The run game wasn't great, but also the run game wasn't great with everyone except for Darisaw, but he was a solid pass protector, and the Vikings had competency at guard. Now, it does seem like things are just sort of are what they are. Like, they gave Brandel the big time contract. Relatively speaking, they drafted Ed Ingram high, and there's obviously a vested interest for them to look good and have them succeed. And Ryner was signed as an afterthought with a cheap veteran deal, and it could be stuck at this point. And it could be a spot where could Ryner potentially be trade or pay cut bait at 53-man roster cuts if he doesn't secure a starting job. It's possible. It's possible, but of course, anything can happen these next couple weeks. Lastly, number 5, Duke Shelly. All right, so Duke Shelly, of course, is a bit of a folk hero amongst Vikings fans. Played great in the Donna Shell defense in 2022, one of the very few people that did, but was let go last year, ended up on the Raiders and the Rams. But in the mix in the cornerback room, like, it's pretty clear that he's behind Fabian Moreau, who is a veteran signed after him, as well as Dwight McLaughlin, the UDFA rookie out of Arkansas. So, I mean, Duke Shelly, I mean, he's probably on the roster bubble right now. Our last 53-man roster projection, we put him on the roster. We put Moreau on the practice squad, but that's probably going to be flipped. So we'll see. Like, we love Duke Shelly, feisty, outside, in-your-face cover man, which you think that would fit in with what Flores wants on the outside, even if he doesn't have that size. But I don't know. Like, I want him to step up because the Duke. We need more Dukes. We need more. We need more Dukes. We need more Earls. We need more just second-tier royalty. That's what we need. Lords and ladies. There you go. But that's it. 5 risers, 5 followers at Vikings Training Camp so far. Let us know your thoughts, our thoughts, comment section below. You guys know what to do. Skull production value.